Hello, man. Hello, MGTOWs. Let me see how everything's going here. I can't tell if that's my speaker sound needs adjustment or that's me. I think it's my speaker sound. Hello, Wookie Lies Matter. Hello, Aaron. Needs adjustment or that's me. Okay, that was my speaker sound. Okay. Let me bring everything up and say hello. Go your own way, MGTOWs. Go your own way. It's a fine spring day. Hello, Riff. Hello. I noticed you guys probably seen the title by now, and I've just been fascinated delving into the incel problem. I've just been fascinated, and you know I'm more empathetic than most about most groups and everything. Hey, go your own way, MGTOW. Go your own way. Go your own way. Go your own. It's easy. It's easy. It is easy. MGTOW is easy. Easy on the mind. It's easy on the soul. It's just an easy living, and makes us all better men. And with that comes empathy and compassion. And it's apathy is a good thing. Empathy is a good thing. Apathy is what we had before we were MGTOWs. We had apathy. Yeah. Sometimes apathy can be a good thing. You just go, let me move over here so I get, there's nothing I could do about this. Sometimes that's the way we feel in MGTOW. There's nothing I can do about this problem. There's nothing I can do in the world to fix these things. But I know about, I know it's hard, and we run up against a brick wall of apathy once in a while. But we'll work through it. We keep going because you know why? Because we're tenacious. MGTOW is a tenacious bunch of men that will not give up. When you think about all the times over the years where we had to take insults and jokes and be the butt of the joke for an inconsiderate nation and the whole blue pill world and all that garbage that they believe in and everything, you will get a little apathetic. But today I'm a better man for it. I'm a better man for my MGTOW. I become less toxic. I become less vile. I become less aggressive. I become stronger. I become smarter, and pretty much better person to be around. First years, a lot of years in MGTOWs, man, I would have probably been on board the whole, a lot of the things, that men do now and everything. And not anymore, not with my MGTOW knowledge and everything. But we're not talking about MGTOW today. We're talking about Incel today, and we're talking about our Incel brothers and their problem. And yesterday we went over the 6 levels of Incel, and the ultimate level of Incel would be becoming a MGTOW monk, and then the 5th level of MGTOW would be becoming a MGTOW. You go through all those things. You'll probably go through as an Incel, if they get everything they want, they go through all those things, and then they become just like regular men. And just like regular men, you will see all the traps. You will see all the pitfalls. You will see why the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You will see all the things that regular men see. Then you will become MGTOW. It's a natural process, and I think MGTOW incels are just a little bit ahead of the curve because, they've had to go through a lot in their life. But the one thing I wanted to talk about today was the Incel is a protected group, as a disadvantaged group. I look on disadvantaged groups today, and we talk about disadvantaged groups and the plight of disadvantaged groups and whether it's fair and whether it's not fair. And I'm going to go over some disadvantaged groups, and I want you guys to do the thing in your brain where you open up your mind and think about a disadvantaged group, and then think about Incel, and then think about what characteristics does Incel share from these these groups and how can they be harmed in our society, uh, and we'll take a look at that and we'll see. Well, I think they do fall under a disadvantaged group, and no, but when we look over the entire internet sphere, and we look over the news and the media and everything, and they're critical about incels. Why are they critical about incels? There's only been 2 incidences that I can remember that incels have impacted the world in any way. That were the Elliot Rogers and the guy up in the van attack in Canada. But that's the exception to the rule. This doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. I have never seen incels become that violent before. But you got to ask yourself, with that, why did they become that violent? When you're a hated group, when you're a group that people often use as a pejorative, incel, that's what they want to do. They want to make the word incel, involuntary celibacy, as a pejorative. And some of these guys, a lot of these guys came over from the Reddit community, which they were kicked off of because, well, they feel it's just a pejorative, and it's not serious. And I wonder why do they get treated the way they do? They're men. That's why they get treated the way they do. They're smallish men. Some of them are weak men. Some of them are ugly men. They're men that aren't considered to be real men. Now, when I look at a woman and when you look at the patriarchy, when you look at what they say about the patriarchy, men are dimorphically bigger. We have an advantage. We're not disadvantaged. Men have an advantage, and we know we have an advantage. So that makes the patriarchy thing. It makes it it makes it plausible for them. They say women are born disabled. That's why I say all feminists are femcells, because women are born disabled because they weren't born with the advantage of sexual dimorphism of larger size. Now, when I look at an incel, most of them are smallish men, weak men that wouldn't be never considered for mating. Now, when I say mating, the prospect of reproduction, what am I saying? I look at the LBGT, and what are their argument? Their argument is and they've got it. Their argument is a disadvantaged group because of sexual reproduction. Now, when I look at the incels, well, the incels are a disadvantaged group because of what, guys? Sexual reproduction. What other groups are there? That are disadvantaged groups, and we'll go down them one by one. And you ask yourself, against this group and against incel, put incel on the other side of the bar and compare them, and say, is incel any more advantaged than these other groups? Children. We all know children are a disadvantaged group, and we have to protect them. We protect them with our lives more often, and I can accept that. And really, there's no comparison between a male adult incel, but incel as a child, as a disadvantaged child. When you're an incel, you're an ugly child, you're a weak child, you're a squeamish child, you're a shy child. You don't know how to socially relate as a child. So you're a disadvantaged child, which is a double. So that clearly puts you in, as an incel growing up in school, like I said yesterday, Alfred Adler was the great psychiatrist, was an incel when he was growing up. He had to work through disadvantages in his life, and he wrote a lot of really great things, but he was an incel. And so children, being a child as an incel, gives you an extra added disadvantage to your already disadvantaged lifestyle of not knowing a lot of stuff. You're a child, you're young, you can't protect yourself. But an incel child is in more danger, and he's even in danger from the rest of the children. So that's the first group, indigenous people. Indigenous people. When I say indigenous people, we can look at indigenous people of America. We can look at indigenous people of South America. We can look at the indigenous people of Australia. when I look at an indigenous person of those certain geographical areas, and then I compare it with the difficulties of accessing social protection and benefits, and the discrimination that they may have to endure, and the social discrimination. And then I look at incels and I ask myself these same questions. Do incels have to deal with economic and social disadvantages because of their incelness? Yes, they do. We went over that in the last two episodes. Often there's a historical injustice towards indigenous people. Okay, I understand there's a historic injustice towards them. Is there a historic injustice towards incels? Yes, incels have always had a. So if you're born a smallish male, you're still a man. You're still a human. Do you qualify for some social protection? Not in this world, because of one thing. Now I'm getting at a point here. I'm using incel to get at a point. Because you're a man. Because you're a man. The incels qualify for these social protections of inequality, but they don't get them because of one thing, because they are a man. So what other groups do we have? What other groups do we have? LGBT. I've already went over the LGBT. What qualifies LGBT people for for a disadvantage, become a disadvantaged group? Either for 4% of our population, they qualify as a disadvantaged group. There's social prejudice in that. There's social prejudice against incels too. There's a um, there's levels of this social prejudice, and it goes from civil to political, and even constitutional. Uh, the inclusion in this thing would fall on the where the LGBT society is including themselves is it falls squarely in the face of reproductive access and reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Well, when we look at incels, what are they saying? Even though some guys are snickering, some guys are saying they have no reproductive rights. So they squarely fall in the same sexual and reproductive health and rights of this of LGBT community. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And so we went over three groups already. We went over children, indigenous people, LGBT, and let me one other group. Let me see, migrants. Now when I see the plight of the migrants that's going on now, and I look at the incels already in our country, incels. What would be the social disadvantage of being a migrant? A minority. You can look at minority groups, and you can say incel is a minority. It's a minority of men that were born with disabilities that inhibit their ability to mate and have sexual reproductive rights, and they're marginalized as an individual group, the same as a minority. Now, when we look at older people, most older people, if you're looking at incel in the collective sense, when people get older, they lose their reproductive instincts. They lose strength, and they lose the ability to protect themselves. So they are protective. So we're talking about ageism here. Most incels were born smallish, and they don't have the ability to protect themselves like the alpha or the Chad, or the Chad or the Tyrone. They can't protect themselves. And some incels like Bill Grayhouse are older minorities, but we look at all these things now, and they still don't receive any cultural social rights from any parties or any policymakers, even though they fall within every single one of these things. Every single one. Migrants, I think migrants are generally healthier than incels. I think migrants would have a more of a chance for reproductive rights. There's no anything inhibiting migrants from having reproductive rights. There's nothing inhibiting them mentally or physically. So when I look at migrants and I look at incels, incels clearly fall underneath migrants in society. Clearly, they fall underneath migrants in society. Older people about the same rights as older people. They have to watch out. They have to watch out again. Mentally, I think most incels are pretty bright, and they have true abilities in their mental conditioning. Another group was people with HIV and AIDS, chronic illnesses, chronic like kidney or disease. Now, this is when I start asking, what are incels? A lot of incels are the same people that are already on disadvantaged groups. They're guys with ADD. They're guys with autism. You know, there would be people with Alzheimer's disease, ADD, Alzheimer's. A lot of incels, probably 30% of them, will never experience things in life because they already are in a disadvantaged group. So when the media goes after incels, probably 30% of that group, they're going after a disadvantaged group. And in the United States of America, that's against the law. That's against the law. And that's why we need to talk about these things. That's why we need to talk about these things. Now, the rest of the incels are just men that weren't born with the same capacity of attracting females or the same reproductive rights as the other. As we're talking about rights and rights of justice, so we have to include everybody in as a whole, each person for the good of our country. And you can't eliminate them and say, no, you're just a man that was born a little homely. No, we have to include them in the same rights and abilities underneath the same laws. And it becomes a system of exclusion to males. That's what I'm saying. But that same system of exclusion to males is the same thing MGTOWs talk about. It's the same thing that we talk about. There's a system out there that works against us, that bars us from being what we are, that bars single men from being accepted and from roles in jobs. To if you're going to, if a lot of people, and it's pure bias, and I think it would be even a bigotry to say that a lot of married people, they will not hire people that aren't married also. So single men are excluded from being hired in higher positions. And now this goes to Congress. This goes to the Senate. I look at the Senate and I look at the Congress and I say 6%, under 6% in both groups are single men. Why? You have to be married. You have to go by those rules. You have to be. You have to live by them religious rules that they say in order to have a vote in this country. So right away, single men's votes in this country mean nothing. Now we can vote at the polls. But you're not going to have. You as a single man are not going to have a representative that's in your favor. That's why we always say in MGTOW, we need a representative to make it to Congress so we can start talking about MGTOW, so we can start talking about incel, so we can help men's rights. But as long as the bias and the bigotry towards the religious institution of marriage exist in our Senate and our House, single men will never have. And this rolls down even farther, and it becomes very visible with the incels. It becomes very visible with the men that were born disadvantaged physically or mentally. It becomes very visible where they're going to end up in life. Most of them will end up on the streets. Most of them will end up pillar to post working just regular jobs, even though they might have a great skill. Hello, man. Hello, everybody. Hello, Derek. Hello, Steve. Hello, Aaron. Hello, everybody that's in. I got a whole bunch of bottles, water bottles up here. I've been drinking water like crazy today. So I left a bunch of water bottles up there. So we're taking about what we're clearly talking about is Simpson's paradox here. We ask the world when we come into MGTOW. We ask the world. We ask the world if this is where I'll wrap this incel thing up. And I know you guys think I was being patronizing when I was talking about it, but it sheds a clear light. We as MGTOWs ask the world if maybe things aren't the way they seem to be. We're talking about Simpson's paradox. We're talking about if you do the actual the measurements on these things, you will find that men have less rights. Men have less rights in divorce courts. Men have no rights in divorce courts. Men have no rights with the children. Men aren't really fathers anymore. You can't be a father anymore. Uncle Sam will be a father. You have no father's rights. Fathers have no rights. Men have no rights. Your rights are diminished in every capacity in life. But we have groups out there. We have groups out there that are against men and saying that somehow, because we are dimorphically bigger, that we have more rights. When clearly, when MGTOW looks, you can start with the Esther Viller book, the entrance book to MGTOW, and see that we're the manipulated male. We're the male that is being juked because Simpson's paradox come in, and if we did measurements on these things, we would find that men have no rights. It's go to work. It's man up. It's we will use your body till you die. You will work till the day you die. You're a slave. Is this okay? And I think it starts at the minimal. It starts at the minimal, at the least part of us. We let it in as men. As men, we let it in because we treat the incels so badly. We treat the lesser men so badly. We tournament. We it's easy to beat up an incel. It's easy to beat him down. It's easy to shame him. And then we let that go. And then we wonder why all men share a diminished capacity and rights in this country. And I think it's an easy concept to understand. Just put yourself in another place. Put yourself looking at another thing. Put yourself looking at your incel brothers with a little compassion sometimes, and then ask yourself: are they part of a disadvantaged group? Are they part? And why don't they get the same benefits of other disadvantaged groups? Feminists and females are considered a disadvantaged group in this country. They get certain benefits. There's a lot of disadvantaged group. Migrant workers get disadvantaged group status. And I think they're better off than incels. They have more opportunity that lay forth before them. And when we ask these questions, it can only be that they're men. Why are they biased against? Because they're men. And then we start asking all the other questions after that we would ask as a MGTOW. Why are the marriage rules biased against us? Why are the rules in society biased against men? Why is there such thing as gynocentrism? Why are the laws so much lesser for women than they are for men? Why are the penalties in laws so much lesser for women than they are for men? Now, I talked about that and the measurements of APA. And we looked at the measurements between the female groups and the male groups in prisons of personality disorders. And the measurements for men were so much more stricter. You'd be labeled a psychopath simply because you're a man. And then that rolls down to why are there only maybe 12%? 12%. There's 2 million. There's 2 million. There's 10% of the number of women in jail that probably commit crimes at a 50% level. There's 2 million men in jail in America. There's 200,000 women in jail in America. They commit crimes at the same rate. They commit crimes at the same rate. But there's a lot more forgiveness in that. There's a lot more forgiveness. Now I was wondering about incels. Do incels get the as they commit crimes? Do they get looked at as a disadvantaged group? Oh, the poor incels. No, they get harsher treatment from what is considered the alpha judge. He's going to give the incel a harsher treatment for being such a despicable person. You're smallish, you're whiny, you're crazy, you're this, you're that. You're a despicable person. You need a harsher punishment. It's the casual cruelty that we do in this universe. It comes from all the years and years of pruning, culling the pack. Men will go off to war and they'll die, and men's lives don't mean anything. A female life means more because she has the reproductive abilities, and then they call us fathers. Son of a bee. So when I think we start looking at these measurements in life, and we start looking at what's a disabled group, what's not a disabled group, what's a disadvantaged group, what's a group that deserves those special privileges, what group should be protected. I think we should look at incels, and every time you see someone in the media say something about the incel group, you should stand up for them and say, hey, buddy, this may be a little PC, but are you being PC? And then we find in that kind of comment that even the PC people are not PC when it comes to incels. They're the biggest group of offenders in that. They're the biggest group that will flippantly use incel as a pejorative. Another group of people that can be labeled as a disadvantaged group they treat like dirt. And that's what started this all off for me. I was listening to the Young Turks, and he was flippantly saying something about incels, why that fat ass is an incel himself. But he was flippantly using the word as a pejorative. But on the same other end of the spectrum, he would go, oh, the feminists are great. The femcells are great. We have to do everything we can for this poor, disadvantaged group of girls. Under what social contract? Under what social, and we went over yesterday, social justice theory. Under what social justice theory would you be so hypocritical? And tell me, which philosopher in the world would let that go? It's hypocritical. Why do they get away with it? Look in the low bar. Because they're a man. Another disadvantaged group that if you took all the stats, you would see that men don't have half the advantages of women or minorities or children. Matter of fact, if something horrible is going to happen, men are expected to run right into it. Men are expected to go to war. Men are expected to pay for women and children. Men are expected to be slaves to that. When you look at the child support laws, you can look at the last chapter, and it says the definition of slavery is when one person works for another. But this law, the 14th Amendment, will not be enacted when it comes to child support. And that's 92% of men. The only way a woman can lose custody of a child is to be such a horrible person or be in prison. And sometimes she will not even lose custody if she is in prison. Now, we deal with the incel problem a little more than people in society because they seem to attach to some of the MGTOW tenants, and they like it, and they find some relief being around men that find them as equals, as brothers, even though we know that some of them, even though we don't validate our existence through the V. So we welcome them as brothers. But then again, we turn around and do the same thing to them. There's the culling of the herd, the same as society does to them. And we squarely place them as disadvantaged. And then we laugh and say, ha, live with that. The same as society does. And the only reason they're not considered a disadvantaged group is because they're men. Hello, Savage Reality. Hello, everybody that's in today. It's hello, Derek. I think there's some crossovers here, and I'm probably gonna lose my fascination for this, or I may keep it for a while, and I may push for it. I want to see in front of Congress next time a human rights case comes up. I want to see incels as that human rights case, and then we can start talking about the ways they are disadvantaged in the light of the world, in the light of truth. Because I think it would help men in general. And I think incels hit most of those barriers, the barriers in the workplace, the barriers for sexual reproduction, the barriers in education, simply because they are what they are. But no one wants to seriously look at what they are, because they are men. Because in some hostile world of the past, men like that would have been slayed in war, used as cannon fodder. They would have been used as slaves. But does that tell us a lot about our society now? That we still carry those injustices with us? In the same group, the PC, the liberals, will use incel as a pejorative and use them as the same cannon fodder. Throw them under the bus. When they need a quick snicker, they'll use it. Like same as always. And they say they're enlightened. They say they're red pill. I don't think they're enlightened. I don't think half the people that say they're enlightened are enlightened. I think MGTOW is one of the few groups that are truly have some concept, has some concept and philosophy worthy of saying we are enlightened. And as for that, the monk The monk, the highest level of all, true human, the men searching for true human enlightenedness, the highest level of all in humanity. Well, we're MGTOW. The tree of life there, Savage. The tree of life. I heard someone what's his name? Immortal Law was going off about the tree of life. I thought that was a cliche term. The tree of life will produce the seeds of the world. What does that mean? I try, no, Derek. I try to focus on women. I try to focus on women, but on myself. Every time I mention something bad about incel, it makes me bad. Yeah, when we utter these words about incels, it makes me less of a person. It tells about me. And I used to be one of those guys all aboard with the incel hate until I did some research, until I looked at it in an objective light, until I put my biases away. I did some analysis on it. I did a little bit of analysis on it. And came to the conclusion that, yeah, they may not be in a good position there. They may not be in a good position to win. That it's absurd how we treat them. How we treat them in MGTOW. I'm searching for a black right now. I can't find it. But how do we measure these things? How do we measure this? We look at it. MGTOWs look at things. We collect the data. We use reliable sources. We're ready to apply them to the things we talk about. We take qualitative data. We do research on it. We collect information. We gain some insight about some underlying reasons that motivates us. What motivates us? What motivates us is the problems that we see around the world with men's rights, or the lack of men's rights, Simpson's paradox in that. We look at quantitative data. Unbiased qualitative data. Quantitative data is unbiased data that's reliable. Qualitative data is we're looking for a certain motivations to the phenomena. What is the phenomena that we speak of? The phenomena of Simpson's paradox and men's rights. Why is there gynocentrism? The gynocentrism, the tendency to err on the side of the female. Then we look at the stats of women in prison, which commit crimes at the same rate as men. And we go, wow. We look at divorce stats and why most divorces are initiated by women. We look at hypergamy and why most divorces are initiated by women, why they're allowed to get away with that slightly more immoral thing. We look at these two women. They killed their 6 children. We look at the Susan Smith syndrome, Susan Smith, the woman with that drowned her baby in a lake. And she had a boyfriend. That was a good enough reason. I looked at a movie yesterday. I was looking at a movie. They're glorifying one of the One of the founders, the youngest founders of Planned Parenthood, says she was involved with 22,000. Her glorification and her claim to fame came from being involved in over 22,000 murders of babies. That's admirable in today's world. That's absurd in today's world. That's absurd in today's world, where you would make a movie and glorify her because she was involved in the murder of 22,000 babies. And not a single father had a right to say, no, I want that baby. That's my baby. That's when you figure out you're not a father. They'll say, no, you're just a man. They'll say, you can't have a baby. She's having a baby and it's her right. And you go, that's right. That's what I was talking about. I can't be a father because I can't have a baby. And it's convenient when you use it that way against me. But when I say I'm not the father, I can't have a baby inside of a divorce court, they say, no, you're not allowed to use it in that way. More absurdity. I'm not a father. I can't have a baby. It's her baby 100%. And I agree with that. If she's allowed to abort it, it's her baby 100%. And I don't have a choice in that because I'm not a father in that instance. Then I've never been a father. And I'm not responsible for taking care of them anymore. And that's where your MGTOW will be found. You are not responsible for taking care of them anymore. In any way, shape, or form. Any way, shape, or form. That's from ritualized dating to marriage to normal life to picking up boxes for them. No, do it yourself. To building these buildings for them as gestures of our manliness, as masculinity, like the Taj Mahal. Men are crazy if they do that anymore. Men are crazy. And men have always been crazy about one thing, the V, the access to that, and the access to reproductive rights. Now we look at the incels. Did the incels have reproductive rights as access of No, they're a disadvantaged group. But the only thing we do, why we do anything as men, is for that access. Yes, they make that. They use those same shaming tactics they would use on the incels, on men, because men are easily shamed and of honor code rules. Not me. It flips right off my back. I get a girl almost every video that comes around and calls me a plethora of foul names. That rolls right off my back. Shaming tactics don't no longer work on MGTOWs. That's the first thing we lose when we come in here. Do not be shamed. Do not be triggered. Because that's how they get what they want. I don't think I can repeat that one, MGTOW thread. You can use those blank if you want to. Yeah, you can. I can't say it on a podcast, or they'll say I'm violent. And they wonder why Elliot Rodgers did what he did. They wonder why the cognitive dissonance in a man's head if he's born of a lesser stature, of a lesser stature. And he himself was born, he did not hit the genetic lottery, should be looked at as a disenfranchised person or a protective group. And he's not, for one reason, because he's a man, because we call the weaker ones, and we say they're not useful, even though most of them would be stronger and more useful than any female. But we call them ones. We cut them down. We trim the herd. We send them to war so they can do the most honorable act of all, sacrifice their life for society. And I've talked about it before. War does not help society at all. It makes us worse. It de-evolves us. We send the best. The gods of war do not pick the men with the club feet or the broken back or the bad knees or the feeble of mind. The gods of war want the best, and we send the best off. We send the alpha males off to die. And how does that promote our society? It doesn't. It drains it. And it hurts our society. MGTOWs complain about these things. It wouldn't be just nice not to have wars? Can't you figure these things out? Aren't you smart enough? But when we look at our Congresses and our houses, I find most of these people ridiculous, unlogical. Most of them are married. Most of them are corrupt. Because corruption, most corruption in our society bases around one thing. If you take a course on corruption, they'll say most corruption comes from what I would do for my family. What extent would I bend the law for my family? So we put those same people in positions of power, when if we were an honest society, we would put single men in a position of power. We'd put eunuchs in a position of power that don't think about that. We'd put Group X, my avatar, men like me that don't think about these things, are not sidetracked by thoughts of sex all day. Asexual men that just don't think about those things anymore. Them are the men that should be in true power, because they have cognitive ability to sort through all the garbage. But we put the disabled ones, the ones that believe in metaphysical gods, the ones that believe in the ritual of marriage, the crazy, absurd ones. And then we wonder why we can't get nothing done in society. Yeah, that's true. 70% of men in society don't measure up. None of us measure up to the what I would call the Don Johnson effect. None of us measure up to the Matthew McConaughey effect or the Michael Jordan. None of us are Michael Jordans. 99% of us are. None of us are LeBron James, Joe Thomases, Kirby Puckett's, or the Iron Man up there in Boston. What was his name? The baseball player, shortstop. Very few, Lance Armstrong. Can Joe ride a bike like Lance Armstrong? No, I don't measure up to Lance Armstrong. But I think I can beat him up because I'm bigger than him. I'm way bigger than him. But should that be the measurement? And what they say is this should be the measurement in society where the alphas win in those situations. And I say, okay, we'll play that game. And just because I'm dimorphically bigger and I can beat guys up, should I be the captain? And they say, no, no, no. There's other determining factors. So they don't really want to play that game, do they? And I find that hypocritical because if ever MGTOW just said, hey, not playing by the rules no more, what would they do? They say, no, no, you gotta play by the rules because we have these rules because we're going to pick the winners and losers, and that's not going to be you. Sorry. Sorry. And I say, well, no, wait, sexual dimorphism and size and strength and intelligence should be the measurements. And that puts me clearly at the top. They say, no, oh, sorry, we'll determine the rules. Yeah, sounds more like nepotism and bias and crazy bullshit to me. Absurdity. The camel. Yeah, the camel. Being a camel. That was a lot of men get Nietzsche's Superman confused, and they get Jung's Uberman confused with Nietzsche's Superman, and then they go down. But when Nietzsche was Nietzsche, that's how you pronounce it in the Dutchy, Nietzsche. I'm such a smart ass with my linguistics. Yeah, he was talking about three groups. He was talking about a group that was camels, the slave, willing to tote their master's bags. And he was talking about another group in there that was the Ubermen, the men that were willing to go to war, the men that were willing to do this. And then he was talking about the successful group of men. And nobody likes to talk about that third group, the men that were like children. He says these are the men that just win in society. So they misinterpret Nietzsche. Most men don't read that deeply into things. The camel, don't be the slave. You can be one of the other two groups, but don't be the camel. Don't tote your master's packs. I look at the groups that have formed and political groups and everything now, from the alt-right to the left, the way left. And all they are is the camel toting their master's bags. And then they'll say, oh, no, we're the Ubermens. No, no, you're not. You're the camel toting your master's bag because you have free choice. Use your democratic right to vote and make your own decision. Do not tote your master's packs for them. Don't be a camel. Don't run around promoting that garbage. But I see it all the time around, even in MGTOW, we got the alt-righters, the Trumpists. They're just toting their master's packs for them. They're the worst example of the slave. And then they say, no, we're not. We're not the slave. Frederick Douglass gives us the example of not the slave. And how do you do that? I'm buying the packs from your brain. You mentally get free yourselves. That's what doing introspections. And he will say, you do an introspection of yourself. So similar to MGTOW, isn't it? How to unbind yourself from society, how to stop being the slave. You do the introspection of yourself and you free yourself mentally. Then your body will free itself physically. Who would know better than Frederick Douglass? He was a slave, an actual slave. The Great Order too. I wish they had like 8 tracks back then at least, or or phonographs, which they could have recorded him so we could listen to him now. But we can read it. We can be MGTOW about things. We can read it. Oops, did I accidentally? No, okay. I'm sorry if I did. I was trying to flip through and hit the approve messages, and I hit the wrong button. I thought I sent someone away. So this is your MGTOW Sunday, and we're talking about MGTOW. We're talking about how we treat the incels and how we treat men. And I've had to change over this last year. You probably noticed a profound change in me. I think I've hit the monk status of enlightenment. And it took a while. And we go our own way. And if you missed it, go your own way, MGTOWs. Go your own way. All your sins from the past, all your sins, and all your sins of slavery, your sins from helping the gynocentric do what they do are forgiven. Every single one of them. Once you're new and afresh in MGTOW. Don't even look that. It's like Lot crossing them sands with his wife and his kids. God told him, don't even look back there. And guess what happened? There's a serious MGTOW story in there too about the story of Lot. She was turned to salt. Why salt? Why salt? A pillar of salt. It's metaphorical, like most of it. We MGTOWs are like that. Don't look back. Don't look back at all that crazy. You'll turn to salt. Oh, grow your beard, become a monk, and have a good life. That's all I can say. That's all I promote. If ever asked about these things, say I do not talk about those things with yous. They diminish from the quality of my speech. Oh. So I'm not going to go on too much longer here today. And I think I'm about done. And with that, I always hope not. I thought Joe was ending. This is a good show. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve. Never buy a house near a church. Yeah, you can't go to a beer store within a half mile. Is that still a law? There's a law that you can't buy beer on Sunday morning around a church. There's still a law. It was a law in Cleveland when I had my bar. I wasn't allowed to open up till after 1 o'clock because there was a church within a half a mile. Yeah, I couldn't get beer. I couldn't sell beer. That was a stupid law. We had a lot of stupid. Don't park your donkey by the curb. In some states, that's still a law. We have archaic laws, and I think most of the laws that we see in divorce courts are archaic laws. They're the same laws. You know, can't drink on Sunday morning. You can't park your donkey by the curb. If you bring an elephant into town, you have to stable them. You can't get somebody else's horse drunk. You know, gosh, getting somebody else's horse drunk must have been such a joy. You can't flip over cows while they're sleeping. Archaic laws for archaic people. I think most divorce laws are archaic. They come from an archaic age that's far gone in our society, and most of them don't see it. The religious queuing laws that lead you up to being a slave. That's all it is queuing. You get in a line. You get in a line. I'm going to get in that line to do that. MGTOWs walk around. They walk all the way to the end and they go, hey, Don't stand in the freaking line. That's stupid. But 90% of society, all the men standing in line. So you go back a little, you can go, hey, don't stand in the line. That's a stupid line. Sit on the MGTOW bench and point and laugh. Point and laugh at the horror you're going to see. And we see it in here, lines and lines of horror stories that come through MGTOW. I hear horror stories. I hear so many horror stories about marriage that I can hardly take one more horror story. I heard at least 3 of them today when I was just flippantly browsing through MGTOWs. And somebody told at least 3 horror stories. Why do we do this? They say, MGTOW. Well, it was an interesting video today. He was talking about, he never went deeply into it in a philosophical way. He was talking about the were you hurt, MGTOW? And I thought the question should never be were you hurt, MGTOW? Is like, why do so many men, millions and millions of men, have them same stories of being hurt by things in society such as marriage and divorce? Why is there millions and millions of men that share the same stories? And it's never the exception. They look at it like you're the exception to the rule. Oh, he was hurt. He's the exception to the rule. No, you're the exception to the rule is making through that without losing an arm or a leg. Or losing your soul. We're not the exception to the rule. We are the rule. 70 to 82% divorce rate in this country. We're not the exception to the rule. We're not the exception to that. 70 to 80% of men will get screwed over at least once, twice, some of them 3 times. Some of those morons fall for it 3 times. Jesus. But that's the blue pill world when they want to believe in it. They have hope. That's Simpson's paradox. They have hope. They have hope that they're going to make it through, not step on one of those metaphysical landmines or eat one of those metaphysical mushrooms or poison berries or the multitude of other things that can happen to you. Lose your house, your car, your sanity, your children. Then be told you're not a father, but you're only a father in the sense of a pay or machine, a paytor, a payer terminal, which you can extract money out of, and that what makes you a father. And if you had more, it would make you a better father. And that's absurd. I'm not a payer terminal. I'm a man. I'm human, damn it. And I can't have a baby. Christ, the world is absurd. And they wonder why MGTOW is around. That's the absurd part. You're wondering why MGTOW is around. That's absurd. Oh, the people, they crack me up. I just sit and laugh and point. What world were you born into? I think the world of Disney and Pixar, where everything's great and there's bubbles and balloons and magic unicorns. Everybody gets chocolate cake for breakfast. You ever notice in some of those movies, like none of them have jobs and you just pay for shit? And they're like, I've seen sitcoms like that. It's absurdity. None of them have jobs. There's like just women. They're just walking around. None of them have jobs, and they have apartments in New York. And it's like crazy shit. It's a con. It is, Steve. It's a con. It's a big con to make you feel like something you're not. You're not a father. You'll never be a father. You can buy into it and just delude yourself and live in that same fantasy world that they do. which hasn't been working out too well. Christ. I look around this society and I think, oh, Jesus, look at the pain and suffering. Look at the tragedy. They call it tragedy. Like a comet came down and hit something. When was the last time you seen a comet come down and hit something? That's a tragedy, by the way. A meteorite slams into a city. That's a tragedy. What we do to the world climate is not a tragedy. It's criminal. What we do to ourselves, what we do to women, what men and women do to men, that's a criminal act. It's not tragedy. It's pure evil. It's pure evil. And then half of them look to a metaphysical God and say, he's trying to teach us something. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. Yes, I have kids. I lived in that world. The world of the absurd, the theater of the absurd. I lived in it for years and years and years, and it merely killed me. And I thank God for MGTOW every day, or else I'd be dead. I'd be dust right now. I'd be dust. Because that world doesn't love you. That world doesn't care for you as a man. That as soon as your utility is gone, they want you to go away and die. That would be the preferred method. As soon as your utility is gone, go away and die. More of the culling. And that's why we talk about our incel friends, because their utility is depleted. Women don't see him as useful except as a beta male provider, a slave. There was a good story this week in the news. Oh, yes, it was the BGS. It was an old video I was looking at. The kid was in front of Jerry Springer. Who's the guy that does the Jerry Springer show now? He used to be the bouncer for Jerry. That's funny in itself. The kid was sitting there, and they were doing, "Is this your kid?" And, "No, it's not your kid." And he started weeping. And the women were like, "But you can still be useful as a male utility to her. And that's what makes you useful in life." And then they said, "Kid number 2, is that your kid?" And she said, "No, it's not your kid." And the mothers continued to say, "You can still be useful. You can be a good cuck." And the kid, "Get away from me," he said. And he started walking away. And the faces in the audience turned to horror. And I wish I was there. I wish I was there. I would have run up there and go, "You're free, run." Run and look up MGTOW, MGTOW. That's what I would have said. Look up MGTOW, you're free, run, don't weep, laugh, in joyous celebration. You won't be a cuck. Steve Wilkos, yeah, that boy should have laughed in joyous revelation. That's what Steve was saying too. He says sometimes these things happen when one door closes, another opens. And what he was saying is run. You have an opportunity for the rest of your life now. Don't be cucked. But the women were sitting there trying to say, your only use at this point, now that you've been cucked, is being a beta daddy, to being a cuck beta daddy. That's where you'll find your masculinity there. The woman coming from a woman, that's where you will find your masculinity. What do they know about masculinity? What do they know about honesty? That's not an honest statement. What do they know about anything? All they want is a provider. All they want is a slave, and we abolish slavery. And until the child services people and the HHS start looking at men other than slaves, we got nothing to talk about. Stop looking at our utility like it's something they cherish. That's called coveting. And it's evil and it's sinful. And women do it every day. They covet the utility of males. It's in the 10th commandment. Some of those things still exist on the walls of some of our legal buildings. Thou shalt not covet. But we do it every day. Yes, I have empathy for my incel brother. He needs to grow through that. He needs to get some experience in life. He needs to try hard to get that. He needs to go through the horror. Then he needs to become a MGTOW. And then he needs to become a MGTOW monk. You can avoid all the horror by jumping straight to MGTOW monk or MGTOW. Avoid. That's what we're telling our incel brothers. Avoid all the horror by jumping straight to level 5 incel. That would be becoming a MGTOW. Avoid the rest. And that's the best lesson I could give this weekend. Because there is no justice theory out there that works for men. We're excluded from that. Take your money and your labor out of the system. Exactly. Find something you do well and you like doing, whether that's making candles or cooking food or working on cars or being an electrician or a plumber or a tree cutter. I used to know a tree cutter. He worked in Seattle, upper state Seattle, where they're logging. He made beautiful carvings out of tree logs, and he brought us each one. He made totem poles, and people would buy them off of him. He did it all with a chainsaw. He was a wonderful artist. All men should be artists in what they do, whether it's cook. And I went out to a restaurant today. They were an artist in what they did. It was a Vietnamese restaurant. It's beautiful. I said, thank God for that person. You love your job. You should love your job. And if you don't love it, you should find out what you love in life. What is love and beauty? The brain, examining the brain for what it likes. That's it. Find that. And that's what MGTOW's about. Find out what you do in life. Find out what you are. Not dying, screaming out to a universe, never knowing what you are. You were cuck daddy. You were a simp. You were somebody else's tool. That's no way to die. That's why you can hear the echoes of them screams from the hospice. I never knew me. Me, I'll die with a big smile on my face. I said the last thing I'm going to do before I die is the nearest nurse next to me. I'm going to say, hey, hey. And when you get close, I'm going to and give her a wet willy, and then I'm going to die. I'm going to practice that, giving I'm going to give someone a wet willy right before I die. And I'm going to say, screw you, world. You're absurd. With a big smile on my face. Oh. And that's what MGTOW can give you. That's it. That's all I got to say today. I'm gonna go off, make myself a cup of tea, go watch the rest of The Tick. I saved 6 episodes. I watched 3 episodes a night. I was gonna binge it all out in one night, but I figured, nah, I'll make it last a week. I'm gonna go watch some more episodes of The Tick, season 2. Happy is got season 2 too. Happy's pretty good. If you haven't watched Happy, I'm gonna go watch some episodes of The Tick and be happy, drink my cup of tea in solitude, and try to get Dougie in from outside because he won't come in today because it's warm and he's just laying out there. He's going to see the vet tomorrow, and we're going to decide what to do with Dougie tomorrow. If he could be cured, or if I can take care of him, or he should be euthanized, and that'll be a sad day for me. So if you don't see me for the rest of the week, I'm weeping because of loss, because of Dougie. And if they do euthanize him, maybe I'll make a video and share his last moments with you guys. And if we can heal him, we will. It's probably going to cost a shitload of money, which I don't have. I have to put on my credit card. But I'm going to try to heal him. And that's it. That'll be my day tomorrow. Probably spending some last minutes with Dougie. Hopefully I can heal him. Hopefully there's something they could do for him. Hopefully. And I don't mind carrying him outside. And I don't mind doing the things that I do for him and feeding him. Because I love him. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. And I love and respect each and every one of you because you're MGTOW and you have the courage in this world to say, hey, I'm MGTOW. I don't buy into your garbage and your absurdity and your lies. And that takes a lot of courage. Takes a lot of courage, man. The courage to be right. I read a book this week. Not a very good book, but it was about Adler, and it was the courage to be disliked. When things are going wrong, sometimes we have the courage to be disliked. And we're never going to be a liked group. But we have the courage to do it because we're right. And being liked and right have nothing to do with each other. Being right is better because we're righteous. And that's what being a MGTOW is about. Go your own way. All your sins on this Sunday is forgiven. Go upon the world and have a blast. Do something that makes you happy this week. If you didn't last week, do it this week. And that's all I got for you guys. And I hope your life's going okay. Most of all, thanks for being MGTOW. MGTOW.